Good morning. Can you hear me?
Good morning, sir.
Yes, sir.
সব ভালো আছো তো?
হ্যাঁ স্যার, ভালো আছি। আপনি ভালো আছেন?
হ্যাঁ, ভালো আছি। শুরু করছি, হ্যাঁ, ঠিক আছে। Okay. We have completed the opening chapter of the guide, and as you know, there are 11 chapters in total. We would like to complete a couple of chapters today. That is, I plan I would complete 2, 3, and 4. Okay, 3 chapters today. As already you have noticed that the novel doesn't have a smooth progression, linear progression, because of the use of two kinds of narrative technique, where we have two points of view, that is the first person and third person. And you see, why not linear? Because something already has taken past, and something, of course, to which the author draws our attention, that is happening right now. Okay, so we have to be very alert as we read the novel. uh, Chapter 2 opens with this: we notice much activity in the field in front of the house. A set of men arrived from the town every morning and were busy in the field all day. We learned that they were building a railway track. They came to my father's shop for refreshments. My father inquired anxiously, when shall we have the trains coming in here? If they were in good mood, they answered, about 6 or 8 months, who can say? Or if they were in a black mood, don't ask us. Next, you will tell us to drive a locomotive to your shop. And they laughed grimly. So, this opening of second chapter is interesting, and because it draws our attention to a conversation between Raju's father and the railway people who are busy fixing tracks in the town. And Raju's father is lucky because his shop is just opposite the station. And you see, at the very beginning, we come to see that people are very busy. Okay, because railway is coming. Railway is coming. Mind you, that is, yeah. This point, railway, why is important for us? Because railway is the lifeline. Okay, the idea is, that is, Malgudi is a Mafasil town, but the moment railway comes to the town, we find that Malgudi is connected with various other parts of South India, and also not only South India, with other parts of India. And work was going on briskly. I lost to some extent my freedom under the tamarind tree because trucks were parked there. I climbed into them and played. No one minded me. All day I was climbing in and out of the trucks, and my clothes became red with mud. So, what is the effect of the coming of railways on the activities of a child? Again, that is being delineated by the author. What is the idea? The idea is, that is, railway, the coming of railway is an important event. And Raju, being a truant boy, of course, he doesn't mind his studies. Of course, the father is there. Soon we come to know the role of the father in the childhood of the boy. But the point is, that is, he himself is not at all studious, no question, rather a truant boy he is. So he plays. Whenever he gets an opportunity, he plays. Okay. But the interesting thing is, that is, I lost to some extent my freedom under the tamarind tree because trucks were parked there. Okay. Because The activities are in full swing, and uh, the idea is that is soon uh, Raju tells about his childhood. Childhood means the other things. As you know, that if you have read his story, Narayan's story, that is father's help, you know that the father is a strict disciplinarian. So, but mother, of course, is a bit liberal, lenient. She carefully put my books and slate into a bag, slung it across my shoulder. I was dressed in clean shorts and shirt. My hair was combed back from the forehead, with all the curls falling on my nape. For the first few days, I enjoyed all this attention, but soon developed a normal aversion. I preferred to be neglected and stayed home to being fussed over and sent to a school. But my father was a stern disciplinarian. Perhaps he was a snob who wanted to break back before others that his son was going to a school. The point to which Narayan draws our attention is that is okay. The father, of course, whenever I mean, it's a regular sort of routine that Raju should go to school, and he can, of course, enjoy some liberty with his mother. But the father is quite rigid. And but another interesting point is that is Raju's father sends his son to school because he takes pride fact in the fact that is when he meets his fellows that his son is a schoolgoer. Okay, so this brings pride to him. And the next couple of pages devoted to Raju's schooling, and we find that you know he is now he's now going to school. But you see, the school for which Raju's father has an aversion is that is a missionary school. The name of the school which is mentioned here is Albert Mission School. Of course, it was close by, but Raju's father doesn't want to send the boy to this school. Why? Because it seems they try to convert the boys into Christians and all the time insulting our gods. So this is the opinion of the father. They insult the Hindu gods and goddesses and they try to convert the boys into Christians. I hope you remember in my first class when I was reading some extracts from Narayan's autobiography, My Days. Of course, one point I emphasized that is Narayan's own father, of course, had this kind of idea. And this is not unfounded because Narayan himself, of course, he tells us in his autobiography that he was the only Brahmin boy. And the classes are often devoted to lampooning Hindu gods and goddesses. So this part, it offers a wonderful fictionalization of that kind of story, personal story. Anyway, uh, Raju was trained in a Pile school. I already have given you the idea of Pile school. And the teacher, of course, because the classes were held on the pile of the gentleman's house, the veranda-like, structure. And the teacher, he lived in Kabir Lane in a narrow old house, with a certain pile in front, with a strict drain running right below it. So, of course, it creates a shabby ambience. The drain is just running below the pile on which the school was going on. And all the classes were held there at the same time, and he bestowed attention on each group in turn. I belong to the youngest and most elementary set, just learning the alphabet and numbers. He made us read loud from our books and copy down the letters on our slates, looked through each and gave corrections and tricks from the cane for those who repeated their phonics. So this, teacher who is also a kind of flogging pedant, he also believes in the principle that spare the rod and spoil the child. And another important thing is about this teacher is that he was an abusive man. Okay, he often used foul terms when he was you know cursing his pupils. And here, with the help of the first person point of view, Raju was sharing a very important, why important? Because it contains an element of humor and fun. My father, who wanted to save me from the language of the railway trackman, had certainly not made a safer choice in sending me to this old man, who habitually addressed his pupils as donkeys and traced their genealogies on either side with thoroughness. This, of course, is a funny point that, this man, of course, this man was foul mouthed. And one day, of course, he used to give his lessons to the pupils and he used to go inside. Okay, on different domestic calls, as we come to know. And once what happened, the children slipped in and passed from room to room until they burst in upon the kitchen. There's a private space of the teacher, of course. And there, of course, they saw the teacher, that he was cooking. And he stood at the door and said, "Oh, master, you know how to cook also." And giggled, and the lady who was standing nearby also giggled at our remark. So you see, this is again a very funny situation, that where the children peep in the private space of the teacher, and of course, they even tease the teacher. Oh, master, you also how to cook also. So this arouses their curiosity, of course. Okay, this is not, of course, an adult teasing one's teacher. Mind you, they are all kids. Okay, so they were surprised the teacher who teaches them alphabet and other lessons, even he knows how to cook. So this, of course, makes them interested. So get out, boys. Of course, he would become very angry. Don't come here. This is not your classroom. So obviously, and but as Raju tells us, in spite of all the apparent violence and purposelessness, I suppose we did make good under our master, for within a year I proved good enough for the first standard in board high school. So we, of course, use a proverb, give devil the due. So here, of course, Raju, he gives his due to his teacher, that after all, of course, he learned quite a few things. Okay, few things. And you see, this is, of course, a train. Right now, of course, it's a corona situation. But as you know, that is why schooling is so important. And particularly, when you are passing through third or fourth standard, and when you're preparing, okay, you are preparing yourself for sitting for admission test to good schools. Okay, when you are very ambitious along with your parents. So the idea is that is obviously you have an ambition, okay, to enroll yourself in a school which is, of course, reputed, which has its own reputation. So here, I proved good enough for the first standard in board high school. So here, Raju does not, of course, talk about admission test, but the ability that he has earned, achieved in the meanwhile, with which, of course, he could go to the board high school. So this is all about the childhood that the first person narrator tells us. But again, Shushmita is right when she writes in the box, yeah, it's a juxtaposition of the past and present. Again, we are brought back to the present. Vilan is there, and Vilan was bursting with news of a miracle. What's the miracle? The miracle is that his sister has agreed to get married to the boy who was the family's choice. I'm so happy how my sister came before our family gathering and admitted her follies. She's agreed. He went on to explain. So, of course, this also brings happiness to Raju. And, of course, Vilan shares with Raju all the details. Okay. And, of course, Vilan also tells Raju that I didn't want to do the second because, and then Raju says, why? For fear that she might change her mind once again. And then he knew why Vilan was rushing it through at space. But the remark threw the other into a fit of admiration. And he asked, how did you know what I had in mind, sir? So as if You know my mind. You are Antarjami. Okay. And Raju remained silent. He couldn't open his lips without provoking admiration. This was a dangerous state of affairs. So this is a kind of braided narrative technique. The first person and the third person. So when he says that, okay, I told Raju, I told Vilan this first person. But then again, the authorial point of view. Raju remained silent. He couldn't open his lips without provoking admiration. This was a dangerous state of affairs. This is all third person, omniscient point of view. And as we go on, we find that is, yeah, Raju is beginning to rate his own smartness nowadays. And as if he cannot open his lips without, squeezing out or causing a kind of statement of admiration from the end of his disciples. And, Vilan, of course, invited Raju, uh, the, the wedding of his sister. But Raju didn't want to join the ceremony. Why? Because again, that is, uh, which is being aired by the third person narrator. He didn't want to be seen in a crowd. And he didn't want to gather a crowd around him as a man who had worked a change in an obstinate girl. But his aloofness did not save him. Okay, if he would not go to the wedding was bound to come to him. Uh, the idea is why he was avoiding crowd, because at least he knows that the other day, the other day he was a jailbird. The other day was a jailbird. So that's why he is on purpose avoiding the crowd, because marriage, of course, offers a social gathering. But anyway, we find that is, the sister along with Bilan, okay, they come. Okay, so at the earliest moment, Vilan brought the girl and her husband and a huge concourse of relatives to the temple. So the people themselves come to the place of Raju. So thereby you find, and of course every day people are coming, and Raju's circle was definitely widening, and the riverbank becomes a public place. It is again, a very clever trick on the part of uh, Narayan. That is, you see how he could, juxtapose the past and present, and how he could, side by side use the two kinds of narrative technique. But if you get adjusted to it, then of course you find that the novel, of course, offers a very gripping narrative. Anyway, but Raju, you know, he wanted to enjoy some sort of privacy, because he himself, as if has become an intruder to this place. Okay, he has no second when he can have a dialogue with himself, when he can talk to himself. And one evening, what he did, before the company arrived, he moved himself to the backyard of the temple and hid himself behind a gigantic hibiscus bush full of red flowers. So that was a conscious design on his part, that he hid himself behind a dense hibiscus bush so that he couldn't be seen. And people, of course, as usual, they would come, so they have come. And now they start the conversation among themselves. He's a big man. He may go anywhere. He may have 1,000 things to do, or you don't know. He has renounced the world. He does nothing but meditate. What a pity he's not here today. Just sitting there for a few minutes with him, how what a change it has brought about in our household, etc., etc. And then again, one says, but he's disappeared today. Wonder if he has left us for good. It would be a misfortune if he went away. His clothes are still all there in the hall. He's no fears. The food I brought yesterday has been eaten. Leave there what I have brought now. He's sure to come back from his outing and feel hungry. Do you know? Sometimes the yogis can travel to the Himalayas just by a thought. I don't think he's that kind of yogi. And then, who can say? Appearances are sometimes misleading. So if you give a close look at this bit of conversation, which goes on between the villagers, okay, in the absence of Raju, of course, the supposed absence of Raju, because Raju was just there, close by, and he could hear the conversation. And when you reach, this kind of point, who can say appearances are sometimes misleading? Please underline this statement. Why? Because, in my opinion, in my own humble opinion, it contains an element of dramatic irony. You have read Macbeth, so you know what dramatic irony is. Okay, sometimes also called tragic irony. Why dramatic irony? Because you see that scene where Duncan, along with retinue, visited the place of Macbeth and was appreciating the balmy weather and the temple haunting martlets. No, you're not. This place would prove to be a hell. Okay, later on, you see the porter would say, this place is too cold for hell. The audience, of course, did know everything. So here, also the readers like you and me, when we are reading this conversation, okay, we know. So to us, of course, this statement, appearances are sometimes misleading. It has a certain value. Okay, because you see, there are two philosophically, there are two old words in the field of Indian philosophy, I should say. There is abubhash, emotion, appearance and reality. So appearances are sometimes misleading. Okay, this, of course, is a kind of statement uh, which has multiple ages when you are talking about the value of the statement, the worth of the statement. Okay, it is. I believe it has multiple ages. Anyway, we're on, and we find that is uh, Raju, of course, as already I told you, that is, yeah, he came out later on and he saw people go. And he was filled with gratitude and prayed that Vilan might never come to the stage of thinking that he was too good for good food and that he subsisted on accounts from air. Why? Because, he was very hungry and he saw in a banana leaf, the food, food wrapped in a banana leaf on the pedestal of the old stone image. So people, of course, they have brought the food. So this made him very, very happy because he was awfully hungry. And this statement, which already I have, read, that he was filled with gratitude and prayed that Vilan might never come to the stage of thinking that he was too good for food. This statement, if you have read the novel, you know, this is a perfectly ominous statement. Because one stage would come in Raju's life when, of course, people would think, people headed by Vilan, they would think that, he's a yogi. Okay, he can even sacrifice food. So the idea is Raju, of course, doesn't want to stick to this place anymore. He wants to go somewhere. Where should he go? Where should he go? Should he go back to his people? But who are there? Should he go to his village? Okay. But if, of course, people, একটা ক্লাসে আছি হ্যাঁ ক্লাসে আছি so the idea is that is he wants to go, okay, but if he should go back to the town of his birth, he had to bear the giggles and of course stare for a few days because people all they've come to know that he was thrown into prison for an offense. For an offense, okay, for a serious offense. Anyway, food was coming to him unasked now, and he thought that okay, where did he go? The place is secure, and the food is coming. So why should he leave the place? Okay, does he have an alternative? Perhaps no. So again, a narratorial, third-person narratorial point of view, he must play the role that Vilan had given him. Again, a very important statement. I would ask you to underline it. He must play the role that Vilan had given him. So as if, his fate is being shaped by this man, that is Vilan. So I'm not, of course, going to play upon the word villain. No, certainly not. But that villain has a crucial role in the narrative. All of you do know. Uh, anyway, Raju was taking preparation for his external appearance so that people can find a saint in him. Okay, he decided to look as brilliant as he could manage. Let let drop gems of thought from his lips, assume all the radiance available, and afford them all the guidance they required without stint. Again, loaded word guidance. Again, hitting back at the title of the novel, The Guide. So Raju is now very conscious. Okay, he, of course, whenever he finds an opportunity, he uses weighty statements, and they, of course, drop from his lips like gems. And but you see, after that incident, okay, when he was hiding himself behind the bush, after that incident, people for the time being stopped coming to the place. Raju was very worried. If people don't come, where from the food would come? So he is very anxious, and he was vividly waiting for Vilan day after day and other people, but they are not coming. Okay, and one day he saw a boy grazing his sheep on the opposite bank. He clapped his hands and cried, "Come here!" He went down the steps and cried across the water, "I am the new priest of this temple, boy. Come here. I have a plantain for you. Come and take it." So this is a palpable temptation, you see. He offers this plantain to the boy, "Come." Okay. And you see, the boy comes, and there is a very important part of conversation. "But I have never seen you here before. I don't come here. I go farther down and swim. Why don't you come here? It's a crocodile place." "But I have never seen any crocodile." "You will sometime. The sheep generally graze over there. I came to see if a man was there." "Why?" "My uncle asked me to watch, and he said, 'What? Drive your ship before the temple and see if a man is there. It is why I came here today.'" So this is something, of course, which has a very important tiding, to our protagonist. So Raju give the boy the banana and say, "Tell your uncle the man is back here and tell him to come here this evening." So this, of course, is a very important signal because Raju is no fool, so he can very well understand that, okay, this is the nephew of Vilan. So with the help of this banana, of course, he can communicate with the uncle of this boy. So this is significant because, of course, I would again pick up the thread when, of course, Narayan, the author, would allow me. And thereby the chapter does conclude and we will enter chapter 3. One fine day, beyond the tamarind tree, the station building was ready. So the preparation, as you see, it was in full swing, at the beginning of chapter 2. So now when we enter chapter 3, we find the station building was ready. The steel tracks gleamed in the sun. The signal post stood with the red and green stripes and the colorful lamps. And the world was neatly divided into this side of the railway line and that side. Everything was ready. All our spare hours were spent in walking along the railway track up to the culvert, half a mile away. We paced up and down our platform. A gold mahar sapling was planted in the railway yard. We passed through the corridor, peeping into the room meant for the station master. One day we are all giving a holiday. The train comes to town today. So even the school children are given a holiday. Why? Because it's a very, very special occasion for the whole town, the Malgudi town, because train is coming today. And station was decorated with festoons and countings. A piper was playing, bands were banging away, coconuts were broken on the platform, railway track, and an engine steamed in, pulling a couple of cars. So idea is, coconuts were broken on the railway track. This is, of course, an important part of the Indian reality. That is, even the coming of railways, this is celebrated. This is, of course, people make a function of it. Okay. And the celebration, of course, when you talk about celebration, Yeah. It contains, of course, some part which, of course, is distinctively cultural. Okay, so coconuts are broken on the railway track. This is, of course, this is part of a tradition. Whenever we begin something, okay, we break coconuts. So this is part of our cultural tradition. Anyway, all of the people are happy, excited, and you see, I don't have time to go into details. Tables were laid, official gentlemen sat around refreshing themselves. Then several men got up and lectured. So Malgudi, okay, Malgudi becomes famous. No longer it remains Mafasi. It is connected with other parts of India. And what is important to, I mean, Raju's family, because you see, uh, Raju's father opened a stall just opposite the station, and a big crowd was allowed to come onto the platform. And my father's shop had record sales that day. Yeah, and record sales. And Raju's father now bought a jutka, that is a horse-drawn carriage. And you see, this is also important. That is a porter installed in a little stone house at the back of the station facing our house. And this very reference to the jutka, okay, uh, yeah, this is important because you see, uh, with which the author wants to help us understand that how the railway, is a marker. The coming of railway signals a kind of new kind of social economy. So you see, Raju's family became the talk of the town because others, okay, they didn't have this horse and carriage, etc., etc. So they become the talk of the town. And but his mother, of course, she had often, some sort of reservation, some sort of suspicion, and she didn't want this kind of fuss. But the father, being very dominating, he didn't care for his wife's words. And of course, this coming of railway, it signals good luck for the family, because now we see that Raju's father was given the privilege of running a shop at the railway station. What a shop it was! It was paved with cement, with shelves built in. It was so spacious that when my father had transferred all the articles from the hut shop, the place was only 1/4 filled. There were so many blank spaces all along the wall that I felt depressed sight of it. So this is again a kind of, this again speaks of a kind of socio-economic mobility. Okay, because from the hut shop they now move on to the shop on the platform of the railway station. I mean, the hut shop is still there, of course. The hut shop will be taken care of by Raju, but Raju's father would be running this shop. My mother would come out to watch the operation and taunted him, with the stock you think of buying motor cars and whatnot. So she would find no opportunity to tease her husband. But, father, of course, won't care. And again, there are elements of fun and humor, because the Narayan's forte was humor. So the station master viewed the shop from a distance with his head on one side, as if he were an artist doing a handiwork. So again, this evokes a sense of fun. But when we enter chapter 4, the last chapter for today's discussion, you see, we again pick up the thread, okay, which was left at the end of chapter 2. So that is the banana, which of course was a palpable temptation to the boy. And of course, the boy, he lit the temptation. He took the banana. So when we begin chapter 4, we find the banana worked a miracle. The boy went from house to house announcing that the saint was back at his post. Men, women, children arrived in a great mass. All that they were wanted to was be allowed to look at him and watch the radiance on his face. Radiance on his face. So something of it, of course, was cultivated, and something was, of course, there. Okay. The children stood around, gazed in awe. Raju tried to manage the situation by pinching a few chicks and saying some inanities, or even indulging in baby talk in order to soften the awkwardness of the situation. And sometimes he's asking the children, what are you studying? As if he was a very good boy, meritorious boy. He was himself a truant boy, as we all know. But he has to very skillfully manage the situation. Okay, so he's, pinching the chicks of the, কেমন বাচ্চা পড়ছো কেমন, what are you studying, কোন ক্লাসে পড়ছো জানো, ইত্যাদি ইত্যাদি, in order to just dexterously manage the situation. Okay. And you see, he came to know from the kids that as such they don't have the school. Okay. So what do you do all day? So if you don't have a school, then what do you do all day? And one of the elders interposed to say, we can't send our boys to school as you do in towns. They're to take the cattle out for grazing. So this is, of course, a very stark reality. Okay. Socioeconomic reality. That is, of course, we have to send our children for grazing, and we don't have school, and we can't simply afford to send our children to even to the schools in towns. But Raju, okay, he must assume a very serious role here, and he was telling boys must read first. They must, of course, help their parents, but they must also find the time to study. In a ceremonious fashion, of course, he'll be telling the parents that, okay, I understand that they are supposed to help you, but the first duty of a boy is to learn. Okay. Shatranang Adhanang Tapa. So he added on an inspiration, if they can't find the time to read during the day, why should they not gather in the evening and learn? So he gives also a very fresh, interesting proposal that I wish, of course, if you have no objection, you can send your children in the evening, because they can use this place as a school. And maybe here, so he says, and of course, he also, in a very commanding tone, he asked the elders that, okay, I want to meet the village teacher. Okay. And ask him to see me. So this is, of course, very, very humorous. That is, he himself, I already told you that he did never mind his own lessons. But he is now wanting to meet the teacher of the village. And of course, one day the village teacher came. I'm the teacher, the man said. At the muddled state of half sleep, Raju's old fears. So the idea is that Raju was enjoying taking rest. And when the teacher said that, okay, I'm the teacher, Raju got so confused because he was thinking of his own, his own muddled state of affairs. Why muddled state of half sleep? Because you see, because he didn't want to go to school regularly, and he was never a favorite with his teachers. So that kind of fear as if revisited him when the man said, I'm the teacher. Okay. The master was rather surprised. He said, don't disturb yourself, I can wait. That's all right, said Raju. And you're the school master? How is everything? So again, a commanding tone that he uses. How is everything? Rather merely replied, no different from what is used to be. How do you like it? What does it matter? I will try to do my best and do it sincerely. Otherwise, what is the use of doing anything at all? Asked Arju. He was marking time. Okay. And you see, Raju then again very sententiously, he tells the village teacher, after all, self-help is the best help. I may be here today, gone tomorrow. It's up to you to arrange it. I mean, if you want a place, you can have it. So this is very significant. I would soon give you an idea, an observation rather, of Meenakshi Mukherjee, who very intelligently, comments on this very episode where Raju is trying to integrate himself with the social fabric. And you see, where again the teacher, of course, where he says that I will do anything under guidance. And Raju, of course, admitted the position that I'm but an instrument accepting guidance myself. So you see, uh, that, I will do anything, he said, under your guidance. When the teacher told Raju that, he was so overwhelmed. And as if the inner voice as it came out. Okay, where he says, I'm but an instrument accepting guidance myself. If you take this statement in isolation, of course, it has its own philosophical weightage, instrument, guidance, particularly when the title of the novel is a guide. So you can afford to, just bypass this kind of very weighty statement. But as you know, already from Virant's nephew, you have got the reference to crocodile. So it's a place which is infested with crocodiles. And of course, the children, they are afraid of crossing the river in the dark. They have heard of a crocodile hereabouts. And then, this is what can a crocodile do to you if your mind is clear and your conscience is untroubled? You can understand the very, the very sense of humor, the sense of fun, which is being exploited by the author. But Raju says, what can a crocodile do to you if your mind is clear and your conscience is untroubled? So if your mind is clear and if your conscience is again untroubled, as if you cannot, you won't dare a crocodile. So Raju, of course, said it grandly, but it again created a kind of very awful effect. Okay. So the idea is that these people, in most cases, they're illiterate, ignorant masses. These villagers. So whatever Raju says, they simply lap it up. Okay. And they engage in adulation. So they don't they, because they always take things at the face value. So even they cannot, you know, understand that Raju is simply making a kind of very hypocritical statement. It is no base really, because crocodile is crocodile, and nothing to do with your conscience or your mind, whatever. But very interestingly, again, the third person point of view. Okay, he was hypnotized by his own voice. He felt himself growing in stature as he saw the upturned face of the children shining in the half light when he spoke. So he didn't know that he has this kind of voice, this kind of skill with which he could captivate the people around, the kids, particularly the children, particularly. And no one was more impressed with the grandeur of the whole thing than Raju himself. So this is again very significant. But I was just telling you that I'll be sharing with you the observation of Meenakshi Mukherjee. Uh, she writes in the Twice Born Fiction. I just quote: "The act that confirms Raju's career as a sadhu is his establishment of a night school in the temple. The school becomes a nucleus around which the village people gather every evening to listen to Raju's discourses and storytellings. These evening sessions grow in popularity until Raju becomes a public figure. But the idea of the school originates quite by accident. During his early days as a sadhu, when Raju is not very sure of the manner he should adopt, he tries to make conversation with the children in the manner of a big people to be seen in cities. He asks them about the schools. And when he realizes the children not going to go to school, he's taken aback a little. And to cover his embarrassment, he utters some pompous exhortations on the need for education. So I talked about this, but one very fresh point that we can take from Meenakshi Mukherjee's criticism is this point, that by asking the teacher to meet him and by asking the parents of the children to send their children to come here and to use this temple premises as a school, Raju emerges as a public figure. Raju is now able to integrate himself with the social fabric. This is a very important thing. Okay. Anyway, we come to know from this chapter again something related to the past. That Raju's father, the meanwhile, of course, has died. Okay. There is a paragraph which the author devotes, a small paragraph, but it is very dense. My father died during the rainy part of that year. His end was sudden. He had been selling, talking to his cronies in his hut shop till late at night. Then he counted the cash, came into the house, consumed his rice and buttermilk, laid himself down to sleep, and never woke again. So this is the date which the author describes. Of course, through the first person narrator. And what is important here, that what will draw your attention is this matter of fact style and the badness. Okay, no, extraneous expression, nothing. And when you're reading this paragraph, I believe you'll be reminded of a great British novelist, that is Daniel Defoe. Particularly, if you, yeah, certainly you can refer to Robinson Crusoe, but also another great novel of Defoe, that is Moll Flanders. Okay, so this bareness, okay, this matter of fact style, okay, Moll Flanders, Flanders, and Raju, my mother adjusted herself to the status of a widow. My father left her enough to live on comfortably. I gave her as much of my time as possible. With her consent, I closed down my father's shop and set up at the railway station. It was then that I began to develop new lines, new avenues for his career. And he was stocking, okay, that is books, journals. Initially, they'll be helping him in wrapping up articles, other things. But you see, this book selling business was an unexpected offshoot of his search for wrapping paper. And you see, whenever Raju finds time, he reads these books, these magazines, etc. And we come to know from the first person narrator that I learned much from scrap. I learned much from scrap. We're on and on. And again, we are brought to the present. That is, Vilan is there, others are the villagers. And Vilan, again, give us a discourse here. Discourse. Philosophical discourse, spiritual discourse. And as Raju listened without showing any of the emotion, but looking as if he were in deep contemplation, Vilan, that we may have the benefit of his wisdom. So all of them consider Raju as a wise man. Okay, the way, he speaks with the villagers, the way he shares stories with the villagers, all of them consider him as a wise man. And Raju, of course, felt cornered because he knows that he's not a wise man and he's not a knowledgeable man. So if people expect, gems of wisdom from him, how could he satisfy them? These villagers. So, there's a point. I have to play the part expected of me. There's no escape. So he realizes, since there's no escape from the clutches of these villagers, he must play his part thoroughly, skillfully, dexterously. And you see, so the people wait and wait, and Raju doesn't have anything, okay, which you call discourse, to give to these villagers. So after a long brooding sentence, he brought out the following words: all things have to wait their hour. That you cannot make a fuss. Okay, all things have to wait their hour. And someone asked, and he says, I will speak to you when another day comes. Someone said, why another day, sir? Because the show, While you wait for the children to finish the lessons, I advise you to pass the hour brooding over all your speech and actions from the morning till now. What speech and actions? Your own, your own. So Raju asked the villagers that, okay, I'd ask you rather to recollect throughout the day whatever you have said, throughout the whatever you have done, throughout the day what has happened to you, just recollect. Okay. And one, of course, said, I don't remember exactly. Well, that is why I said reflect, recollect. So, this is how he is managing his situation. Okay, because as already I brought out, that he doesn't have anything which you can, of course, call discourse. And when someone says that, why do you ask us to recollect all that you have said since daybreak? And other says, if you do it, you will know why. And then again, a third person, omniscient point of view. The essence of sainthood seems to lie in one's ability to utter mystifying statements. Again, a kind of solemn mockery at the cost of Raja's hypocrisy. That is, if you can make mystifying statements, you can impress people. That was a strategy that was adopted by Raju, our protagonist, at this point. So now we reach the conclusion of chapter 4. That is, Raju, one thing, of course, he decides that, okay, he is taking preparation, so that he can impress people that he's a saint. But he must also take care of his physique, everything. And the point that draws his attention is a clean-shaven, close-haired saint was an animal. So he must cultivate a beard. Otherwise, he cannot impress you. And you see, he bore the various stages of his makeup with fortitude, not minding the prickly phase he had to pass through before a well-authenticated beard could cover his face and come down his chest. Well-authenticated beard. That is, he must have. Okay. And Raju has now become a public figure, and his life has lost its personal limitations. And he now belonged to the whole world. His influence was unlimited. He not only chanted holy verses and discourses on philosophy, he even came to the stage of prescribing medicine. Children who would not sleep peacefully at night were brought to him by their mothers. He pressed their bellies and prescribed a herb, adding, if he still gets no relief, bring him again to me. So the idea you find is, he's very, very clever. The idea is two things I would like to share with you here. Number one is, since he has become a public man, so not only teaching, not only giving discourses, he must also prescribe medicine. Okay, because this is what we expect, that if you are a sage, not only you teach us philosophy, but even, on demand, you can also prescribe herbs, okay, for us. This is this is certainly a part of the Indian reality. This is what we expect from the saints. Saint, of course, quote unquote. Number two is, this thing is again interesting for us, because when I read with you some portions from Raju's, not Raju's, Narayan's autobiography, you remember, I tried to give you an idea of the portraiture of Narayan's own granny. That is, if people suffer from snake bite, or if people, scorpion bite, and other elements, and she could cure them. So somehow, this is playing at the back of the author's mind. But most importantly, I must tell you, that is, even if you read Ramakrishna Kathamrita, you would see that people come and they ask for medicine. যে পেটের ব্যথা, শুল, ওকে, কেউ বলছেন আমার এই অসুস্থতা, কারো স্ত্রী, কারো তখন ঠাকুর বারবারই বলেছেন যে আমি কিন্তু কোনো ওষুধ দিই না। But this is our expectation. This is our expectation. So this is, you see, now I conclude. So this 2, 3, and 4, these 3 chapters that have just covered, what is the show? The show that Raju is, I don't know, I cannot use this sentence, this statement, that Raju is on his journey on attaining to sainthood. I cannot use this kind of statement because at least we have some idea of what is sainthood. But the part that is expected of him to play, he plays it very dexterously. That is what the narrator, unravels in front of us across the chapters. And Raja's own crisis, when people were not coming to his temple, how he, you know, I mean, came out of the crisis, how, because he was very intelligent, how through his native intelligence and wit, how he could, you know, uh, mesmerize the villagers again. Okay, by just offering a palpable the banana to Villain's nephew. And of course, how he was able to integrate himself with the society all around him, and how his place became a public place. Yeah, sometimes he became very tired of it when when he couldn't enjoy his privacy. But where could he go? So he realized that he must play the part that has been ascribed to us by Bilal. He doesn't have any escape from it. So here he is performing the role of a saint very thoroughly, and he's also taking care of his well cultivated bird, well authenticated bird. He now becomes a public man, and he doesn't have any private hour. He now belongs to the whole world as of. Thank you very much. So this is, such a gripping narrative, such a well-told story, such a great novel, so to say. I wish that I could read this novel with you in the classroom, but I'm sorry, we have to get adjusted to this. Already we have adjusted to this virtual mode. So if you have any question, of course, you can raise it. But first of all, I would take your roll numbers for marking you present. Then, of course, you can interact with me or raise your questions if you like. Today is 3rd May 35. Rule number 1,
Yes, sir.
2, 3, 4,
Yes, sir.
5,
Yes, sir.
6, 7,
Yes, sir.
8, 10,
Yes, sir.
10.
Yes, sir. 10.
আচ্ছা, সোনালি কি আছো? 8, 11,
Yes, sir. Sonali.
আচ্ছা ঠিক আছে, 11 কে আছো? সঞ্জয়? 12, 13,
Yes, sir.
12. Okay. 13,
Yes, sir. I am 12.
আচ্ছা হ্যাঁ দিয়েছি আমি। 14,
Yes, sir.
15,
Yes, sir.
16, 17, 18,
Yes, sir.
20, 22,
Yes, sir.
25,
Yes, sir.
26, 27,
Yes, sir.
28,
Yes, sir.
30,
Yes, sir.
31,
Yes, sir.
32,
Yes, sir.
33,
Yes, sir.
34, 36,
Yes, sir.
37, okay, 37,
Yes, sir.
38, 39, 40,
Yes, sir.
41,
Yes, sir.
42, 43,
Yes, sir.
44, 40,
Yes, sir.
45,
Yes, sir.
46,
Yes, sir.
47, 48, 49, 50, 51,
Yes, sir.
52,
Yes, sir.
53,
Yes, sir.
55, 56,
Yes, sir.
57,
Yes, sir.
58,
Yes, sir.
59,
Yes, sir.
60, 61,
Yes, sir.
62,
Yes, sir.
61 আছে বলে না 62 okay
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
yeah 64
Yes, sir.
65 66
Yes, sir.
67 68
Yes.
70 72 73 75 76 77
Yes, sir.
78
Yes, sir.
79
Yes, sir.
80 81
Yes, sir.
82
Yes, sir.
83
Yes, sir.
84
Yes, sir.
86 87
Yes, sir.
88
Yes, sir.
89
Present, sir.
90
Yes, sir.
91
Yes, sir.
92
Yes, sir.
93
Present, sir.
94 95 96
Yes, sir.
okay 101
100.
102
Sir, roll
রাজস্বী
number
মিত্র
100. Yes, sir.
রাজস্বী তুমি কি তুমি প্রথম
I
ক্লাস
was a bit,
করছো
না স্যার আমি একদিন করেছিলাম স্যার, ঘরে ছিল একটু মানে প্রবলেম ছিল, অপারেশন ছিল, দিয়ে একদিন ঘরে ছিলাম, দিয়ে এসে নিয়ে স্যার শুক্রবার তো ক্লাস হয়নি, আজকে করছি স্যার, অনেকদিন ক্লাস করা হয়নি, সরি স্যার।
ফ্রস্ট পড়ানো তো হয়ে গেল ফ্রস্ট পড়ানো তো হয়ে গেল এনিওয়ে কি করবে আর 101 102 104
Yes, sir.
105 106
Yes,
107
sir.
106
Yes,
107
sir.
108
Yes, sir.
109
Yes, sir.
10
Present, sir.
11
Yes, sir.
12 113
Yes, sir.
14
Present, sir.
16
Yes, sir.
17 18
Yes, sir.
Present, sir.
19
Yes, sir.
okay 19 Rima
Yes, sir.
121, 151,
Yes, sir.
152. Okay. কে বলছো 107 107 কে তো দিয়েছি 96 কে দিয়েছি দিশাকেও দিয়েছি 108 86 কে সুজন মল্লিক সুজন একে দেওয়া হয়নি 86 আর অভিষেকটাকে তো দিয়েছি আগে অভিষেক চ্যাটার্জি হ্যাঁ so if you have any question observation
Sure.
yeah
Sir, my question is Raju is forced to change himself as a saint because we know that there is no saint in him in the very first episode, and what is the most climatic situation or climatic episode of Raju's life? Is it the fate is properly responsible for the changing of Raju as a saint?
you cannot have your answer right now because we have only completed 4 chapters right but the idea is the word force which you're using quote unquote yeah there is some sort of force pressure upon him and from which of course you can't he simply can't afford to escape but you see as he will be marching on in the life course in the course of life you'd find that there'll be some change in his internal mechanism his attitude to life his worldview uh, and some sort of spiritual awakening of course would be there I don't know I mean whether I can call it absolutely spiritual awakening but at least he would reach a stage when he can tell himself that he must not play a hypocritical role okay with these villagers who trust him so much who depend on him so much he must not disrespect their honor he must not disrespect the trust that they have put in him so it is too early to answer your question Shorab we have to read the novel the whole of it then and then of course we can of course try to address this issue this very complicated issue to what extent he was genuine he was true to himself and to what extent of course he had to play a role I mean it was role playing on his part this is Shushmita we all know that Raju has dexterously played different roles in different parts of his lifetime but he is successful in playing roles properly and with full responsibility it's not that he is deprived of conscience and moral values again it is an interesting question Shushmita yeah when he plays roles which of course help him okay in different phases of his life and career yeah sometimes he takes a hypocritical stance obviously he's not always true to himself but for survival he has to do that because food and shelter two things okay without which how can you survive so the point is that is if you talk about moral values yeah the moral values at times were jeopardized but again I mean I reiterate that is for their survival he had to do that but human mind is very complex and truth is as you know as I often share with you this proverb truth is really I mean never pure and really simple so truth is never pure and really simple and again it would be evident in the life of Raju which would be narrated by the author so again I mean I would request Shushmita to just wait because we can't arrive at conclusions at this very moment. When you read the novel time and again, if possible, then of course we can draw our own conclusions. But thank you, of course, for your questions, observations.
Sir, another, you have earlier mentioned that appearance is sometimes misleading. But
Yeah.
sir, which appearance are mentioned here?
Here, the saintly appearance. Okay, but the point is that innocent villager, okay, there was a kind of conversation yogis can go to Himalaya by thought, etc., etc. And others say that, how can you say that? I don't think that he's that kind of yogi. And others said, how can you know? So he might look very simple, but how could you know that he's not that kind of yogi who can just go to Himalaya by thought? So you see, it is a part of a conversation. But when you read it time and again, you'll find that in a way it contains elements of dramatic irony because we people understand. We know that Raju is just hiding himself behind his bush, he's listening to the whole of it, the whole of the conversation. And Raju is not that kind of yogi. And that Raju is taking care of his appearance. Again, it is evident to us. So you see, this sentence itself is very loaded. Okay, that appearances are sometimes misleading. So, you know, that's why I use the word, it has very many edges, EDGES, very many edges, very many dimensions, very complicated dimensions. So when one uses a statement, one sometimes doesn't know that it is capable of multiple interpretations. And the Guide is such a rich novel where some sentences are so weighty, loaded, that they're capable of more than one interpretation. That's the point. Okay. Yeah, ambivalent. Yeah, ambivalence is there. Ambiguity is there. Yeah.
Okay, sir.
Okay. Thank you then. Thank you, everyone.
We should wait for
Yeah.
the answers.
Please read the novel and even time and again. It's such a rich novel, such a rich novel, as you see. Yeah.
I have read it earlier, sir.
You read it earlier, but yeah, as I'm reading the novel with you, okay, so
Yes.
you just go along with me. But thank you, everyone.
Sir,
Bhalo
খুব
thako.
ভালো, খুব ভালো লাগছে, sir.
Thank you, and take care. I was a bit skeptical whether I'd be able to do justice to this novel in the virtual mode, but if you people encourage me, of course, I can give my best. Thank you very
সে
much.
দু একটা ওয়ার্ড যেগুলো আমরা ভাবি না, সেই ওয়ার্ডগুলোই কোকোনাটের যে ব্যাপারটা এখানটা এলো, তো
আমার ভীষণ
পড়ে
মনে
ফেলে
হচ্ছিল কারণ আমরা দেখবে যে কোনো এতেই একটা ক্লাবের উদ্বোধন হলো একটা কোকোনাট ভাঙিয়ে কেমন এখানে মজার একটা রেলওয়ে ট্র্যাক বসেছে, ট্রেন আসবে প্রথমবার, তাতেও কোকোনাট ভাঙা হচ্ছে, ভেরি ইন্টারেস্টিং। থ্যাংক ইউ।
থ্যাংক ইউ, স্যার।
ওকে, ইয়া, টেক কেয়ার।
টেক কেয়ার। Okay, 19 instances.